I'm sharing two new releases from Hero Arts, the Seaside Blooms and the Summer by the Shore. I've created 5 cards for you today using stencils, die cuts. I use the letterpress in 3 different ways, and these cards are fantastic. Hey everyone, it's Joy here, and welcome to my channel. Okay, we're going to start with the Seaside Blooms release. This is the Coastal Blooms stamp set. So this is a layering stamp set, and then we're going to be using the Harbor stencil, which is also from the Seaside Blooms release. We're going to create a fun scene card using both of these. So I'm going to ink up my first part of my fence, and this is on Spellbinders Seaside cardstock. And I am using Hickory Smoke Distress Oxide ink for my fence. For the second part of the fence, I am using Lost Shadow. Then for our greenery and flowers, I am using Pink Fresh Studio ink. I have their little mini ink cubes here. And so for the green, I am using from the Green Gables collection, Eucalyptus and Spruce tips. Then for the flowers, I am using the Fairy Dust little collection, and I will be using Raspberry Bliss and Sparkling Rose in that. So these just line up. So this is going to create this gorgeous fence with beautiful greenery and beautiful flowers. And so they just layer in on top of each other, next to each other. And so I'm going to create this scene. Now, originally when I started this card, I had a completely different scene in mind, and it did not work out. So I actually used the other part of that scene for another card, and then I switched up how I was going to use this card. And I apologize for my voice kind of going in and out. I have got allergies so bad today. It is very windy where I live, and it's just kicking my butt. So I'm going to ink this up a couple times. This is stamping all of these beautiful individual leaves on here, and they are so pretty. So the next 2 stamps are going to be our flowers. I also wanted to mention that I am going to be an instructor for SBC Fest, which is put on by scrapbook.com. This is a free virtual card event that happens September 12th, 2025, and I am one of 6 instructors. And so I'm going to link that down in the description where you can grab your kits. The event is free, but if you want to craft along, you can grab the kits. My kit's in there. You can grab other instructors' kits, but I will have that listed and linked for you guys below. And I'm just super excited about it. So I thought I would share that with you. So I did the detail flowered stamp first with a darker pink, and then I'm going to come in with the solid flower stamp set. For me, it felt a little bit easier to line up. And I'm going to do a lighter pink stamping over that because it's not going to cover up the darker pink, if that makes sense. So I'm going to ink that up and then layer that right on top. Look how pretty that is. Then there is a coordinating die for that. And in this stamp set, there's also a little flip-flop set, a bucket, a pail, and then there's sentiments. So is there sentiments? No, there's not. Yes, there's a couple sentiments. Yes, there is. Okay, I am marking my little registration marks for my stencil. This is the Harbor stencil. This is, I think, a 3-layer stencil, and I am starting with the ocean, and I am using peacock feathers to ink that up. Now I marked my little registration marks because I don't have the stencil lined up perfectly. I have it moved up a little bit on my cardstock. This is an A2 side piece of Seaside cardstock from Spellbinders. And I moved it up a little bit because we're going to have that fence in front. Does that make sense? So we're going to be, it's what the scene is going to look like is like maybe we're in our yard by the ocean, looking at our beautiful fence with our beautiful flowers, and just past that is the ocean and the sky, and we're going to see birds and we're going to see boats out there, like totally a dream. I used some tumbled glass for the sky. And because I'm starting already on a colored cardstock, it's making the rest of this go really, really quick and easy. Okay, so that's the first layer. I'm going to get, or the first stencil, I'm going to get the second stencil, and they are numbered. And I'm using scrapbook.com's Grip Mate to hold everything down. Now I'm going to come back in with that tumbled glass for the sky, and I'm going to try to go darker on the stencil. So we're going to get a few different layers here. I'm going to peel that back because I want to make sure it's working, and it is. And then I'm going to use some white pigment ink, a re-inker, and I'm dabbing with a clean foam blender tool onto the ocean. It's not going to be stark white, but it is going to give another layer of white. I wanted to go lighter instead of darker because this is like, you know, to me, it makes me think of this is where the sun is shining on, if that makes sense. The third stencil is on, and I am using Hickory Smoke for the ships. I thought because we use that on the fence, it would be great to pull that into the background as well. I didn't want to go black. That would be just too dark. And I didn't want to do different colors. I really wanted the scene to be on the softer side. So that's what I'm doing. Now I'm inking up the sand area, but I'll be honest, I really didn't need to do a whole lot. I could have just left it the one color because there's only one little spot in the fence that you're going to see through that. And I just wasn't thinking. I was just stenciling away. So, but it totally works out fine. But how fun is that little scene? I love this. And you can see now that our fence is going to go in front of that. Let me ink blend a little bit of sand there at the bottom of that fence. Okay, I need my sentiment before I finish stamping. So I am using the Banner Day stamp set. I use this for all of my cards, or almost all of my cards. And then there's two sizes of banners that you can use to die cut out. So I'm going to be doing that. And I stamped that with the Hickory Smoke ink. I probably could have used the larger banner, but it fit good enough. Then back in my MISTI, I have the little birds from the Coastal Blooms stamp set. There's 3 total, 2 of them hooked together. You have one larger and 2 smaller. I'm going to stamp these again. I'm going to stamp one more large bird, and in that little grouping of 2 birds, I'm only going to stamp up the smallest one. So I'm going to make sure to not ink that up, and I'm going to just clean off that other little bird just in case, and then I'm going to stamp that one more time. Okay, so I have that stamped, and now I'm going to use scrapbook.com's white luster marker to create some splatters over this whole background. And it dries, or it looks really light right now, but it dries a really bright white, which is really nice. I'm going to distress the edges of this piece and my A2 size card panel. I'm going to add 2mm foam adhesive behind this piece here, and I did already stamp that sentiment from the Banner Day stamp set with the Hickory Smoke ink and use the coordinating banner die for that. And I'm going to pop that up with foam adhesive, and this will be adhered to a white A2 size card base. Look at how cute that is. I love that stencil and stamp put together. I love how this little scene card came out. Okay, on to our next card. I am using this is the Message in a Bottle die, and I'm using it with Teal Topaz cardstock from Spellbinders. I'm going to die cut out that bottle, and that's going to be our shaker window. Then I am using the Scattered Shells letterpress and foil plate, and we are going to foil. I am going to use opal foil for this. It's really light and pretty, very shiny, and you can definitely see it in the light. The only problem is if you aren't paying attention when you cut this, like I did not on this first piece, you can't tell what side is the foil side. So when you're rolling this out, the side facing you, the side facing up right now, is the foil side. That's the side you want touching your foil plate or your letterpress plate when you're foiling. Otherwise, it's not going to foil correctly. I do have my Glimmer hot foil system heating up. I'm going to lay this down. I created a hinge. That way, if I didn't get a good foil, I could add another piece of foil and just lay my plate over. Now that that's all nice and hot, I'm going to add my plates to the top, run this through my Platinum 6 die cut machine, and I like to go slowly forward and backward. And then when I'm done, we can slowly pull that foil off of our paper, and we have this gorgeous background for our shaker card. I am going to show 2 other ways to use this letterpress plate as well. Okay, so this is from the Message in a Bottle die. I am going to ink blend with Hickory Smoke and Gathered Twigs, our cute little scroll here, or our little note. I'm going to do a little bit of ink blending with that. Then there is the cork, there is the tie for the top of the bottle for the scroll, and then there's flowers and leaves. I die cut the flowers from Chiffon and Dahlia cardstock from Spellbinders. I used a dark brown and a craft cardstock, and then I also used a white cardstock and Seaside cardstock from Spellbinders for the leaves. So a little bit of walnut stain here to ink blend all of our little rope pieces and cork pieces, giving it a nice good dark brown. Then I'm using Kitsch Flamingo inside of those chiffon colored flowers. I will use Abandoned Coral inside of the Dahlia colored flowers, and then Peacock Feathers on those leaves that are die cut from Seaside cardstock from Spellbinders. And I do have everything listed and linked for you guys below in the description. So let's get a little ink blending on that. And then the white leaves, I did not do any ink blending on those, but I did want to add some white. I'm also going to die cut a seashell from the Sophisticated Shells dies. I die cut the background piece here from chiffon cardstock and doing a little bit of ink blending with the Kitsch Flamingo. And then the top part of the die is just white cardstock. And I'm using mixed media cardstock from scrapbook.com, and then that will be adhered onto that. I'm going to adhere a piece of acetate to the back of this with some tape runner, and I'm going to trim the excess acetate off. And then we're also going to be adding some 3mm foam adhesive for around the bottle. Now, to get it to shape around the bottle, I am going to remove the release paper, and that is going to create a little well for all of the shaker bits pieces to sit in. I'm gluing together that really cute scroll of paper. This is going to be loose in our shaker window. Because the bottle is so big, we can get away with a big piece moving around. So I thought it would be really, really cute to have this darling little note in the bottle, or message in a bottle, moving around. I'm also going to be adding sand embossing powder from Hero Arts. I'm not going to heat with it. I am going to put it in there loose so it looks like sand, and I love it. Now, this may not be for everybody because it can stick to the acetate, and it will. I personally don't mind, so it's totally fine with me. Let's adhere the cork to the front of our bottle before we add our adhesive. Then there's a little vellum piece that is around the neck of the bottle. I'm going to adhere. There's 2 of those pieces. I'm just using one because that's really all that mattered. You wouldn't notice the other piece on this. And then we have the rope or the twine or whatever at the top of the bottle with the little tails for that. And then there is the little top piece for the cork that we will also put on there in just a minute. I have a piece, a scrap piece of Seaside cardstock that I'm adhering to my white A2 size card base. I want this to be the back of the bottle. And here is that foam adhesive that I'm talking about. So I'm removing the release paper. That makes it easy to bend around. Also, being this close to the opening means all your shaker bits aren't going to go out of view. If I had just put foam adhesive around the edges, you would not see a lot of the shaker bits, and I don't want that. I'm going to add more of that around the edge. Now, I need the side of the foam adhesive to not be sticky. So I'm going to bring in an anti-static powder tool to kind of make that not sticky. And I'm going to do that as careful as I can, but I'm sure I got some of that on the top of the foam adhesive, which you really can't help. So I'm going to add a string or a line of liquid glue all the way around to really make sure that that is going to adhere nicely. Because if not, all of your shaker bits are going to fall out, and we don't need that. Then I'm going to put in our little message, and then I'm going to dump in the sand embossing powder. And you can put as much or as little as you want. I did put in a good amount. Now, I should have removed the release paper from the other foam adhesive. I did not. I was really careful, but sometimes if it gets stuck, it can lift your paper and kind of bounce it. And then all of that, or not all of that, but a lot of that embossing powder would come out. So luckily that did not happen. And then I'm going to adhere my A2 size card base down, and I'm going to really press this down, giving that liquid glue a chance to adhere. Following with my hands, I can feel where the foam adhesive is and really following those lines and giving it a nice good press. And then when we turn it over, we have this really awesome shaker, and our little message in the bottle moves around. And I love that. I think it is so much fun. Okay, now we can start putting together our pieces. Here is that little top part to the cork. I almost forgot about that. We have our seashell and flowers and leaves. This is the sentiment. I stamped and die cut from the Banner Day stamp and coordinating die. It says, "You're a treasure," which is a really fun sentiment. And then I'm going to place all of these flowers around. Some of them have a little bit of foam adhesive behind it. I'm going to tuck that one flower in at the top, and then we can start tucking in all of these leaves. I wanted this to be very floral heavy, a lot of greenery to add to this pretty bottle. So let's tuck that flower in, and then we can start working on our leaves. Again, I have white leaves and those Seaside leaves from the Seaside cardstock with a little bit of peacock feathers ink blended on that. So I'm going to tuck that around, put all of those in place. And then I do want to add some more white to this. So I am going to add white pops of color, and I kind of do that with either splatter or white pops of color with all of my cards. I just felt like it added a little something extra. So I'm going to grab that here in just a second. And then we're going to add that to the centers of the flowers, and then also a little scattering around the clusters of flowers. And I'm going to tap the back. It flattens out that little point from when you kind of squeeze it out of the bottle. It flattens it out and makes these a really nice round circle. So really super cute and a really nice way to finish this off. So let me add a few more, and then we can take a look at this. Look at how pretty and look at how fun that shaker is. I love how everything moves. Super cute. Okay, on to our third card. I have die cut all of the seashells from the Sophisticated Shells dies. I can't even tell you how happy I am about this. I love seashells, but one of the main reasons is it has sand dollars. And I'm going to use sand dollars twice on two cards, and I love them. But anyways, and I'm sorry that the lighting and my filming was a little bit off. I don't know why it was, and then all of a sudden later it was totally fine. Anyways, I die cut all of these from white cardstock. I'm just going to layer them on white, which I think is really stunning. And we're going to use the Letterpress plate again, which is the Scattered Shells Letterpress and foil plate, because you can foil with it, but this time we're going to emboss with it. So this is another way, a second way that I'm going to show how to use that plate. And we're going to go with like the dark blue and white kind of look for this card and throw in a little bit of a tan color. I used the same Banner die stamp and die, and it says, "We're better together." That's the sentiment I did. I may show this one. But I'm using liquid glue to get all of this glued down. And I'm going to give this card to my husband because it was just our wedding anniversary on August 1st. We've been married for 26 years and together for 27. Okay, so here is how we're going to emboss. That's a little foam plate that goes with, that you can get with your Spellbinders Platinum 6. So I'm going to have my base plate, my shim, the foam plate, cardstock, then my letterpress down on top, and then you have your top plate on top of that. You run it through your die cut machine, and look at how beautiful that is. It totally embosses all of those images. Then I'm going to splatter it with my white luster pen, and I was thinking about my husband with this card when I used the "We're Better Together" sentiment, because Since losing our daughter in September of 23, he has just been really amazing and really good. And it made me think we are better together. I know a lot of marriages have a hard time when they, lose a child. But I feel like we have come together in such a way. And so this card is definitely for him. And that made me think of that. I am going to stamp this onto some craft cardstock. I'm doing it sideways so it'll fit my die cut. And I'm going to sprinkle on white embossing powder. I prepped it with an anti-static powder tool, used Versamark clear ink, and then I'm heating it with my heat tool. Then I'm going to die cut that out with that little banner die. So now let's glue on our seashells. I have 1mm foam adhesive behind all the seashells. We're going to have 2 little collections of 3. I'm actually going to change out 2 of these seashells, but look at that gorgeous sand dollar. Sand dollars are my favorite. They're so pretty. I have jars of them from collecting them on the beaches. And then 1mm foam adhesive behind those pieces. I did trim this down about 1/8 of an inch on all sides. I'm going to center that sentiment right in the middle, and then I can place my other pieces on top. And then this will be adhered to a white A2 size card base, and that will give us a nice little frame around the edge. Look at how pretty that is. Okay, 3rd card is done. Let's move on to our 4th card. Now we're actually going to use the letterpress with the letterpress system. So here's the lid. I'm going to tape my piece of cotton cardstock from Spellbinders. That's the suggested cardstock for your letterpress. That's going to give you that indentation that the letterpress is known for. I'm going to place that in the center. My letterpress plate, this is the Scattered Shells letterpress and foil plate, is already centered. It's a magnetic one. And I'm using a different ink. I'm using archival ink from Ranger, and this is Pebble Beach. This is going to be the background to one of the backgrounds that it was supposed to be for that first card, but it is not. I had to shift gears. Run it through your die cut machine, and then you have this beautiful stamped and slightly indented embossed images. So that's our background. Okay, now I'm going to go back. This was the very first card I was making. I have it taped off. Ignore that. You don't need to. I'm drawing a little line for the sand and the water. This was going to be paired with that fence die, and I just wasn't thinking. And then when I put them together, it did not work. It was not the right orientation as far as the view goes. So this is more top down. The fence was more straight on, and I just wasn't thinking about that when I was making this. So on my Seaside ink from Spellbinders cardstock, I am ink blending with peacock feathers at the bottom. And I failed to mention on the last card, that was Oceanside cardstock from Spellbinders, that beautiful dark blue cardstock. Okay, so I'm going to ink blend softly there. Then at my taped mark, I'm going to do my sand. So again, you don't have to do it. Don't tape it off. You don't need to. It just doesn't even make any sense. We are going to use the Hero Hues Unicorn ink, but not yet. Let me get the sand color. So I'm going to use Antique Linen first, and then I will come in with a little bit of the Gathered Twigs. These 2 colors together are a perfect sand color to me when you mix them. When you add the Gathered Twigs, it looks a little bit more like the wet sand. And so I'm going to lightly ink blend around the edges and almost up to the water line, not completely. And if you notice, I'm going to leave a little bit of area open where that light blue Seaside cardstock can still be seen. And I'm going up to that light pencil line that I made and just giving that a nice, good little ink blend. Look at how pretty that looks. So we're going to add more to that little lighter area because I want to add some white, some surf, and we're going to do that with unicorn ink and white embossing powder. But first I'm going to take my pencil and erase that pencil line. I don't want to accidentally see that, so I'm just going to remove that now. And then I have my white dome foam blender tool, and I'm going to ink that up really good, and I'm just going to pounce onto that white area. it's going to go onto the sand and onto the ocean, which is what I want. And you can see it's getting a little bit lighter and lighter. Now, also, this ink is a little bit stickier, longer, like it's going to stay wet longer, which is perfect for adding some white embossing powder. Now, I'm not going to just dump the white embossing powder on. I'm actually just going to use my fingers and sprinkle a little bit on. And I want some of that to go out into the ocean and some of it onto the sand, because it's going to look a little bit like the surf, the white surf that comes up every time that wave crashes. So that's what I'm going to create here. So just sprinkling that on. Now I am going to heat from the underside because I don't want to take a chance, even though that ink is sticky and it probably wouldn't blow off. I'm going to heat it from underneath until it's melted, and you can watch it melt right there. And then I'll just take my heat tool to the top really quick and go over it, making sure everything is nice and melted. And then I'm going to trim that card panel down, but look at how fun that looks. Oh, I love it. I have a piece of that Seaside cardstock that I'm going to stamp my sentiment from. The sentiment is from the Coastal Blooms stamp set from the Seaside Blooms release. The rest of these other products that I'm using, the banner, the sophisticated shells, the message in a bottle, the foil plate, or the letterpress is all from the Summer by the Shore release. So I'm going to ink that up. I'm going to white heat emboss that as well. Now, from the, oh my gosh, what are they called? Sand dollars. When you die cut those, there's the inside piece that, or not the sand dollars, excuse me, the starfish. When you die cut those, there's an inside piece that creates a smaller starfish, really skinny starfish, which I actually have some at my house, and I am going to use those for this card. So I'm going to center this. I added 1mm foam adhesive behind it. I'm going to add that in the center of that letterpressed plate, and then here are those little white starfish. So I'm going to glue those down. Our sentiment is right above that on that Seaside cardstock. It says hello. And then this will also be adhered to a white A2 size card base. So I'm going to add those there, and then I'm going to come in with the pops of color and just add really tiny little dots near the starfish on the sand. I love this little background, so simple, so cute, but you have some leftover pieces, you have some scrap pieces. I had this ink blended piece that I couldn't do what I originally thought I would do with, and now we have a card. Okay, on to our last card. I foiled again using that Scattered Shells letterpress and foil plate onto the Oceanside cardstock with Aura foil. I am using a arched die cut. I'm going to die cut this out. This is going to hold our scene. I have also die cut sand dollars. I'm using the Pebble Beach ink, and I'm going to ink blend darker on the back pieces and lighter on the top pieces. So I have 3 of these sand dollars. Those are from the Sophisticated Shells die. And then I have 2 scrolls of paper from the Message in a Bottle, and I'm going to ink blend those exactly the same way I ink blended the first one. So I'm not going to show that. I'm not going to show repeat things. I'm showing this because I have not ink blended these seashells. So a lot lighter with that sand pebble color, which is the perfect color for sand dollars. So now we have all those 2 scroll pieces together. I'm going to glue that down to my arch. I'm going to add 2mm, I think it's 2mm. Nope, 1mm foam adhesive behind that, and just kind of tilt that around. I have also die cut the leaves from the Message in a Bottle die from Seaside cardstock. I'm going to place that down. Let me get these other 2 guys glued down. I was kind of deciding where I wanted that third sand dollar to go. And then we're going to pop in all of these leaves everywhere. And I'm just going to group them in 2s. There's 2 leaves in there, so they go in different directions. So I have them where they're kind of facing out from each other. And then the sentiment that I'm using is from the Banner Day stamp set, and I'm using the large wavy die, and it says Sending Birthday Wishes, and I did that with white heat embossing. Let me get this last one in place here. Well, actually I have one more after this, but I wasn't quite sure where I wanted it until I had my sentiment die cut, or stamped and die cut. So there's that sentiment. I'm going to place that there, and then this will be popped up with foam adhesive. That was like 2 words, like 2 or 3 words in one. That's so funny. And then I can place that down. And then let's finish this off with our pops of color, our white pops of color. And then we can take a look at this card. That is 5 cards, you guys, from the 2 releases. And I love every single one of these cards. They are all so much fun. And look at that gorgeous foil from that letterpress plate. Thank you guys so very much for joining me today on this really long video. I hope that you feel inspired. I hope that you see how you can use these products in different ways and how you can group them together and make some really beautiful, more intricate cards and more simple cards. So thank you guys again for joining me. I hope you guys have a really amazing day. Bye.